Congratulations on the film. This is an absolutely extraordinary horror film, so congratulations on such an amazing film.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, that's very nice of you.
So, I have to ask, where did the idea for the retreat come from in the first place for you?
I think it was a combination of a couple different ideas kind of coming together and mixing really nicely. I've always wanted to make a backpacking movie in general, and we had this idea about psychedelics and the wendigo, which I really... The wendigo has such a supernatural element to it, and combine that with the psychedelic nature of what they're doing, and once we kind of start riffing, me and a couple of the producers, these ideas meshed so well that we just... The story came actually really organically.
So what was it about backpacking movies that made you... Sorry? Yep. What was it about backpacking movies that made you want to make a backpacking movie?
I mean, I just love the idea of it being so much more than, a haunted house or something like that. When you actually get really into the elements, it kind of brings a whole different side to a person when you watch them reacting to whether it's the snow or, they're just stuck out in the middle of nowhere, or they're on a boat or anything like that. When you're on this alternate ground that's not necessarily something you're not necessarily comfortable with, I just love what that brings out of characters.
Talking about the elements, tell us a little bit about where you shot this film, because it looks absolutely amazing, but how difficult was it to shoot in that kind of environment?
It was tough. I mean, we really went out into it. So we shot the whole movie in the Adirondacks, where the movie takes place, and I remember there's these high peaks there, and there's these 46 high peaks, and they're tough hikes, and especially in the winter. And I was talking to the actors, and I was like, I really want to actually do this. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And so the very first day of shooting, we drove up, and it was right outside of Lake Placid, and we started hiking, and I think it was only about a couple hours into it, we realized just how difficult it was going to be. And it was cold, and we were just trucking along with a lot of equipment, bringing up to the summit of the first summit they climbed was called Cascade Mountain in real life, and once we got to the top, it was well worth it, and the footage we got I was really happy with, but that was just the first day, and we realized we're going to be out in the snow pretty much for the rest of the shoot. It's worth it at the end, and it really shows on screen, but it was taxing, I have to admit.
What kind of effect does snow have on the equipment? We have a lot of filmmakers who listen to this show. Does the snow affect any of the equipment that you're using? Like, I know, of course, you can't put equipment down on the ground and leave it there for any length of time. So what challenges does shooting in the snow bring to you and your equipment?
It's a good question. There was a couple different challenges. When I noticed, when they're on top of the mountain right in the beginning of the movie, we're actually on the summit, and on my red camera, that started giving us some issues. And I'm not sure what it was. I'm not sure if it was the wind, the cold. I don't think it was, but it definitely was something to do with the area. And we actually had to alternate up there between DSLR camera, which is better equipped for shooting up there, and the red camera, and they cut together, and it works out nicely. But yeah, I mean, obviously you can't get the equipment wet. It did get a little wet up there, but you can't, you'll ruin your gear. The lenses, when it's going between the hot bag and then out in the cold, you get a lot of issues with that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you got to account for, and then there's the sound issue, and we have our sound guy was on set, and thank God, but it definitely, you're up there, it is, and no matter where you are up there, it's windy, and you got a lot of different sound elements coming at you between the snow and all the gear that they're wearing and everything like that. So between sound and just making sure your camera's at the right temperature and keeping your lenses unfogged, it adds a lot of different elements to shooting that in a controlled environment you don't really have to deal with.
Yeah, you had some amazing drone shots as well. They turned out absolutely spectacular. What were your thoughts when you saw those shots that the drone captured?
I remember we had the drone with us the entire time, and I would try to allocate some time each day to a little bit of drone operating, whether it was we could grab a shot, like an overhead sort of thing, or if the sun was in a really nice position, we could get some shots. I remember when we were in the high peaks one day, and we were descending off this mountain, and the sun was coming down, and it looked really nice, but the drone was in the car back in the trailhead, and I was literally sprinting down the entire way, trying to make it back to the car so I could unpack the drone and get it up in the air and get some of these shots just because it looked so nice at the time. And then we had an idea because we needed to show the isolation and how there's literally nothing around him at that point, which there isn't. So it was really easy once it's in the air, if the sun's in their position and the weather's okay. It wasn't too hard to make it look great.
Yeah, definitely. It looks absolutely amazing. Now, you mentioned earlier that the story came together pretty easily. When did you decide that the Wendigo was going to be the creature in this film, and what kind of fascinated you about that urban legend?
Pretty off the bat, it was going to be the Wendigo. We knew it was going to be a winter backpacking story. We wanted it to have this a lot more character based, and the Wendigo comes with a lot of personality in terms of how it affects a person. It's not a typical monster in the woods. It's just like looking out for blood. I mean, there's that element to it, but it digs into your brain, and there's a real psychological horror element that's super fun to really dig into. And so we love the fact that if you were isolated out there, not only dealing with the elements, that you were being psychologically tortured by something like the Wendigo. And on top of that, we get to feature like an actual creature monster that's hunting you, or multiple ones that are hunting you. It was like the best of every different scenario. Like, it was all these kind of things that we wanted to try doing and wanted to explore. The main focus was the psychological horror element, but we also got to do so much more just by virtue of the Wendigo being such like a kind of like this unique monster that has so many aspects to it.
How much research did you have to do into that mythology? Because I know so many people kind of just laugh off horror films and think, that there's no research there. How much research did you actually have to do into that mythology?
A good amount. I mean, the Wendigo is different than some, like Bigfoot or other creatures or monsters, in that there's a lot of different versions of the mythology behind it. There's a lot of different versions of how it looks, whether the Wendigo is just a spirit, whether it's the actual creature, how it infects you, why it infects you. I came across just a lot of different ideas, and that was the most fun part of it, was, when there is, obviously it's not real, and when there is all these different versions of the story from, so-called experts, you get some liberties to do your own thing with it and to create a little bit of mythology behind it, while not, at the same time, not disrespecting anything that came before it.
Yeah. The other thing that really makes this movie work too is your casting choices. Tell us a little bit about the casting process you went through and why you went with the people that you went with in the end.
So I think almost all of the cast in here I've worked with before, so I knew them pretty well. I needed to find, especially for the leads, there was a certain amount of athleticism and durability that had to come with it. You can't really do that part if you're not ready to commit yourself to, being freezing cold, having, to just deal with it and, take in the elements and use the elements to your advantage, but then having to do a take, 10 times, or then do a bunch more coverage from the different. There was a lot to do. So I knew Grant Schumacher, who's the lead, he plays Gus, and Dylan Garun, who plays Adam, were both ready to do. They were ready to commit themselves to whatever it needed to be. And at the same time, they're also friends in real life. And I'd met them separately from different projects, but I knew they were pretty close. And they, I think, were able to access some aspects to their friendship, and use them for the movie, and I think it worked out really nicely.
It did. It worked out so well. I guess we're running out of time, but to wrap things up, bringing a movie out during a pandemic, how difficult has that been for you to have the movie come out at this time, and has it changed how you've brought the movie out as well?
That's a good question. I think normally we would have done more of a festival run with it, and that would have been. It's always fun to see a movie in a theater with an audience and really get to feel what the movie is. I mean, it's not the same as, you go on social media once the movie comes out and you'll see one version, but actually sitting in a big dark theater and feeling the reactions and how people, see the movie, that's the most fun part. That's the part you look forward most, and, that's just not going to happen right now, and so that's a bummer, but either way, the movie's going to get out there. It's going to be on VOD, and people are going to be able to see it in their own homes. And hopefully, I find a way to get a feeling about what the experience is like. And yeah, so yeah, it's been a little bit of a bummer, but at least it's getting out there.
So I guess to finish up, what would you like to say to people out there before they head out to see The Retreat on VOD?
I think just prepare yourselves, and it's a trip. I mean, like, if it's a drug trip for the most part. It's so prepare yourself for that kind of roller coaster, that psychological roller coaster when you go into it. It's a lot more than a beast in the woods, killing things. There's a lot more to it, so get ready.
Definitely. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for joining us on our show today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we know a lot of our listeners will go and check out The Retreat, so congratulations.
Thank you so much, David.
Not a problem, mate. You have a great night, and hopefully we get to talk in the future.
Sounds good.
Awesome, mate. See you later. Bye.